Welcome to The Snap with Alexis Perry and Sydney Jones.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Broncos Podcast Network for the Week 15 edition of The Snap. I'm Alexis Perry, joined, as always, by my friend Sydney Jones. A little bit later in the show, Buffalo's very own Maddy Glab will help us get set for this Saturday's matchup between the Broncos and Bills, and of course, share a little insight into her career. But first, let's start with the quick snap of the day. Like you all know, the Denver Broncos are coming off a huge confidence-boosting win over the Carolina Panthers on Sunday, as Drew Lock put together arguably his best game of his young career. He completed 77% of his passes for 280 yards, 4 touchdowns. There was a goose egg, a donut, as some would say, in the INT column, and he put up the third best passer rating in Broncos history, only behind Peyton Manning and John Elway. So clearly, Sydney, he made some huge strides on Sunday. What area of his game did you see the greatest improvement in, though?
Yeah, Alexis, some huge strides for Drew on Sunday. I think we saw improvement in a lot of areas of Drew Lock's game, but one thing that really stood out to me was the fact that he didn't throw an interception. Hallelujah. No offense, Drew, but that was your first game without throwing a pick since week 2. And I think to thank for that was his ability to throw short and intermediate passes, which is something he recognized after the game on Sunday. It is something he's been working on all season long. I really think he did a great job utilizing those shorter passes to the running backs, the tight ends, to then, set up those deep balls to his wide receivers. Specifically 2 deep balls come to mind. Those 2 bombs he threw to KJ Hamler, who scored on each of those plays. Those shorter passes, I think, improved his deep ball, something we've seen Drew struggle with this season. He was 3 of 3 for 117 yards and 2 touchdowns on passes of at least 20 yards downfield. And one other thing I want to mention too is the offensive line's performance, which obviously aided Drew in having his best performance of the season. The offensive line was impressive against the Panthers as they allowed just 1 sack. And this was an offensive line without Garrett Bowles, one of the best tackles in the game, and Graham Glasgow. There were a lot of new faces thrown into the mix on Sunday. Netane Muti, Calvin Anderson, and Elijah Wilkinson. I was really impressed with the way those guys stepped up.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I was really impressed by the Broncos offensive line throughout most of the game, and just the screen passes that him and Pat Shurmur were utilizing. I think that was really great for Drew Lock. As a whole, I just felt like he was reading the defense a lot better. All in all, a really strong performance from this Broncos offense. So as a whole, what do you hope the Broncos actually take from that game and apply this week as they hope to upset the Bills here at home?
Yeah, that's a great question, Alexis. Quite frankly, everything. We played a complete team game on Sunday, and that's something we certainly need to do more of moving forward for the rest of the season. But one thing in particular, I truly hope the Broncos apply this weekend is the ability to minimize those turnovers. Denver leads the league in turnovers, sadly. Drew Lock did turn the ball over once against the Panthers on Sunday, a strip sack by Jeremy Chin that resulted in a Panthers touchdown. But like we've mentioned, Drew didn't throw any interceptions on Sunday, which was key. So I hope they continue that trend.
Yes, I feel like no turnovers is key up against this really strong Buffalo Bills defense. But before we move on to the long snap of the day and learn a little bit more about this Bills team, I have to know, Sydney, who are you giving your snaps to this week?
Yeah, I think a lot of guys deserve snaps this week, Alexis, but I'm going to have to go again with Drew Lock for all of those reasons we just talked about. That poor guy has received so much criticism, so much doubt throughout the past 4 weeks of the season. And I think he deserves some love. A really impressive game from him. Like you said, best of his career. So my snaps are going to Drew. I hope he just, continues to build off of that within the 3 remaining weeks of the regular season. And I think he will.
Great choice in Drew Lock. I think this week I'm going to go with Deontay Spencer. He's the AFC Special Teams Player of the Week. He's the first Bronco to earn that honor since Trendon Holiday back in week 2 of the 2013 season. I think that 83-yard punt return for touchdown was really a tone setter for this team on Sunday. It breathed life into this Broncos team early. It gave them that early lead to play with and allowed both the offense and the defense to just play a little bit looser because they had that that lead. And, not to mention that was his first game back after missing 2 weeks battling COVID-19. So I think it's safe to say he will never forget his first NFL touchdown. And hopefully he'll take another one to the house this week up against the Buffalo Bills. Here now to help us dive a little bit deeper into this week's matchup, we have the ever so talented Maddy Glab, team reporter for the Buffalo Bills. Maddy, we cannot thank you enough for joining us here on The Snap this week. Can you believe it's already week 15? This season has just flown by.
No, I can't. This is my second season in the NFL. I came from college football. And so my first season here, I was like, by week 15, I was like, oh my gosh, this is the longest season in the world. How do NFL people do this? Because I'm used to like 12-week seasons. Now in my second season, I'm like, oh, this just completely flew by. Pandemic or not, I feel like it went faster because of the pandemic in a weird way. When the off season, I think we can all agree, felt like forever.
Yes. The season has flown by for me too. This is my first season in the NFL, so everything's still relatively new, but I'm kind of happy it's flown by because of all the COVID protocols. But Maddy, the Bills have had a ton of success so far this season. The number one team in the AFC East right now with a 10-3 record and coming off a big win on Sunday Night Football against the Steelers. What has been the secret sauce for the Buffalo Bills here in 2020?
Yeah, I think the secret sauce in this team, since Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane got to Buffalo, their defense was always pretty good. They were great on defense last year, have turned a corner this season in the second half of the season with their defense. So that's been something that's been consistent for this team for the last 3 seasons, now in their 4th season together. But I think the secret sauce, the thing that's been missing in all of this is the offense. You get Josh Allen, he's a young quarterback, he's got potential, and he's shown what he can do in his 3rd season, but the weapons around him have really helped it all come together. And the addition of Stefon Diggs has paid dividends here because he is one of those pieces that without him, I don't think we would be 10-3. We needed that extra wide receiver. We needed that person that made everyone better. He makes Josh better. Josh makes him better. So I think the secret sauce is really the offense. Last year, they averaged 19.6 points per game. This season, right now, they're up to 27.6 points per game. So to see that big of an increase has really been the difference in this team in winning games. Last year, they lost games by 7 or less points in all of their losses, except for one game, which was against the Philadelphia Eagles, where everything kind of fell apart in that game. It was a really weird weather game. So they just needed to score points, and they've been able to do that this season.
Well, you kind of mentioned this a little bit. Over the last few seasons, we've really seen the Bills buy into Sean McDermott and what he's trying to do there in Buffalo. You draft Josh Allen back in 2018, fought through some growing pains there, and you're now reaping the benefits of patience. So what has really impressed you the most about Josh Allen's development over the past few seasons?
Gosh, I think so many things. And last year was my first year with this team. So I really didn't get a true look at him in his rookie season when he started to play. But last season to this season, there is also just such a big difference. And you'd think in last year to this year, comparative to a lot of players, that the difference players have been able to make and improvements and things like that maybe wouldn't have been so big just because of the off season we were all dealt with, because the mini camps were canceled, because guys couldn't really get together, because camp was shortened, because there was no preseason. But Josh Allen gets on the field in camp and everyone is looking around at each other thinking, what happened? Like, how did this all come together in a few months? Yeah. And we were all thinking that in training camp, and then we go and see him do it in games. And in the first few games, a lot of us are believers in Josh and believe that he can be a great quarterback. And I know he is, but just to see the jump he took it was a little bit shocking for all of us to see the difference from last year to this year in his completion percentage. He was 59.3%, I want to say, last year in completing passes, or just under 60%. He's up to 68.6% right now. I mean, all of his categories, when you're talking about a quarterback, he ranks in the top 10 and compares with some of the best quarterbacks in the NFL right now. Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, Deshaun Watson, you name it, he's up there with them. And so I think to see all those stats to come together and to see the jump that he's had, because he was in the 20s, he was in the teens for a lot of those stats last season. And to see him now be in the top 10 for so many things has been amazing. But on the field, it's really been recognizing defenses. I think as you get older in the NFL, you have a better feel for that. I think he's been able to make checks at the line of scrimmage this season that he wasn't able to do last season. He's in his third year with the offensive coordinator, Brian Daboll, and our quarterbacks coach, Ken Dorsey. The relationship that they've been able to build in 3 years, you're now seeing that pay off. You're seeing consistency with the offensive line, with their wide receivers. Stefon Diggs is a new addition, so is Gabriel Davis. But I think since he's had John Brown and Cole Beasley since last year, that chemistry has gotten better between those guys. And Josh Allen is a quarterback that likes to take chances sometimes. When the game is on the line, Josh may do some Josh things that you look at and you might say, oh, buddy, that wasn't the best decision. But that's because of his competitive nature that he has inside of him. And you just kind of have to take that with Josh because he gives you so many other great things. And I also think this season, he's been able to decision make better. So when he's in situations like that, he may not throw an interception. He may not try and roll out of the pocket and make some incredible play. He may just sit back, throw it out of bounds, or take the sack. And I think that also shows a lot of growth steps as he's in his third season now.
It's funny when you talk about Josh Allen, it reminds us a lot of a guy that we have here in Denver, number 3, Drew Lock, our quarterback. He's definitely very similar, aggressive by nature, loves to take chances, and he's still so young. He's only 15 games into his career, so we're kind of watching him go through these growing pains right now as well. So since the Broncos are in such a similar situation, what do you think Broncos country can learn from what Bills Mafia experienced over the last few years watching Josh Allen develop?
So Bills Mafia is a very passionate fan base, just like the Denver Broncos have. You have your super passionate fans who just want to see success for your team, and they don't really care who's going to do it. They just want to see success. And I think something that we have to remind all of our fans of is it takes time. And you guys have a new head coach who's in his second season now. You have several young players. You have a very young quarterback who showed a lot of promise in the college level at Mizzou and who's coming into the NFL. And it's a different game for quarterbacks in the NFL. For positions, certain positions going from college to the NFL, there's quite a bit of growing pains that you have to go through, which we talked about already. And I think someone like Drew Lock, who is so young in his career, he's just learning a lot of those things that Josh went through in the last 2 seasons. And I think we hear so many people talk about year 3 for a quarterback and how year 3 is really the year where you get to see if this quarterback is for real or not. And I think so many fans just want to get to the point of knowing if they're real, get to the point of seeing them succeed, that they forget, the first 2 seasons, it may not be all sunshine and rainbows. It may be a little bit tough. There may be some interceptions thrown. There may be some bad decisions, but it's all part of the process. And we need to give quarterbacks, rookie quarterbacks, second-year quarterbacks, a little bit more time. Let them get into year 3, let them get into year 4, before you truly start to judge and truly start to see what this player can be. Because I think those first 2 years, you're really just trying to get your bearings on everything. And I think Drew Lock's a good quarterback. I got to see him at Mizzou for a little bit because that's where I went to college, and he was after my time there. But still, I mean, this kid played at an SEC school. He got drafted into the NFL. He's shown a lot of great signs. I mean, look at what he did last game, 4 touchdowns. You put up games like that and hopefully that there's going to be a future. They just need to kind of figure it all out and be able to put it together. And it takes time.
Well, I hope Broncos country starts to listen to that advice because Drew has received so much criticism this season. And honestly, I feel bad for him because, like you said, he does need time to develop. And, you mentioned Stefon Diggs a couple times. Any young quarterback needs those reliable weapons, as we've seen that Drew needs this season too. How has the addition of Diggs this season kind of changed what the Buffalo team is able to run offensively, but also what has he changed in the locker room? Maybe what has he brought?
I mean, everything, anything, and everything. Everybody is so pumped and so happy that he's on the team. The coaching staff has said so many times, and the players have said so many times, just what he adds to the team, not only from a standpoint of what he can do on the field, but what he can do off the field. And he's talked about it. We've talked about it a lot. Just the rep that he got coming from the Minnesota Vikings maybe wasn't the best rep in the media. And Sean McDermott, our head coach, was talking in the media this week and said, we knew what we were getting with Stefon on the field, and our GM, Brandon Beane, knew what we would also get with Stefon off the field, because you take the time to get to know a guy as a person. And our locker room here is very strong, very close, very tight knit. And so they don't just pick any player. The players that they choose to be on this team, the players that they draft, the players that they pick up in free agency and things like that are guys that fit the DNA, guys that fit the locker room, the culture. And on the outside, when you grab a player like Stefon and just how he was portrayed in the media, it may not seem like he was the best fit, but holy moly, was he the best fit. This guy is so genuine, so kind, so caring of his teammates. He wants to win. He doesn't care if he gets the ball on every single down. He doesn't care if he gets X amount of targets or catches a game or X amount of touchdowns in a season. This kid wants to win. This kid wants to form relationships with his teammates. It's been amazing to see what he's brought to the locker room. And in a year where we really haven't been able to see the locker room because everything's been over Zoom, it actually really shows through Zoom what he's been able to add to the team. And I think that's something that's a little bit tough this season, but he adds a joy, I think, to a lot of our players. He adds humor, a little bit of comedy to the team. He's a dancer. Our wide receivers, every day before they go into individual period, when they break to get into individual period, they all dance together, and Stefon is part of that. And it's so fun to see, and it brings a smile to my face every time I see that. And then on the field, I mean, he opens up the field for our other receivers and our other players to do things, because if you're going to play against Stefon Diggs, odds are is you're going to put your best guy on him or you're going to double team him. And even then, Stefon is able to make plays and catch the ball. We saw that happen, and we saw that play out against the Steelers. In the second half, Josh Allen went after Stefon Diggs, and he had a touchdown and 6 catches for, I want to say, 60, 80 yards in the third quarter, I believe, finished the game with over 100 receiving yards. And that's what your best wide receiver can do. They can catch the ball when they need to catch the ball, and they can open up the field for other players to have success, like our tight ends, like Cole Beasley, like our rookie Gabriel Davis, like our running backs. Someone on the field who can play to that standard, that level, that caliber. They also make everyone else better around them. And that's what he's been able to do in his first season with the Buffalo Bills. And I think after watching him, even through week 14, I'm like, I hope you're in Buffalo forever, buddy.
Well, outside of Stefon Diggs, who we all know is so hard to go up against, who are some of the other weapons on this Bills offense that may pose some problems for this Denver's defense this week?
Yeah, one thing that Stefon Diggs loves to say is that Cole Beasley is always open. Our slot receiver, Cole Beasley, he is someone who hit a career high in last week's game for receiving yards. Stefon Diggs also hit a career high in receiving yards in a single season last game. And you talk about Diggs making people better around him. Cole Beasley has flashed in ways that he hasn't flashed in his career this season. I think it's because he's on the Buffalo Bills. I also think it's because he has a guy like Josh Allen throwing to him, and he has a guy like Stefon Diggs who's next to him. Cole Beasley is someone who gets overlooked a lot and I think is so underrated in this league. He has the most touchdowns for players that are 5'8" or shorter. And when you talk about his size and guys that he's going up against, when he's running his routes, he can make cuts that nobody in this league can make because of his size, and that makes him so hard to guard. He also can do a lot more than a slot receiver can do. So he's someone who can wreck the game, who can wreck the game plan because of the way that he's able to play. Someone else that you never want to count out is our 4th round wide receiver, Gabriel Davis, who's playing at a level way higher than a rookie and a level way higher than a 4th round pick. We all know that the wide receivers in this year's draft class were so great because you guys also have 2 of them in KJ Hamler and Jerry Jeudy, and you've seen how it's played out for you all. Gabriel Davis leads the team in touchdown receptions. He is someone who's been asked to play and learn every single position for a wide receiver. That's something that you don't usually ask of rookies unless they're truly talented. He's filled in the role of John Brown, who's been on the IR the last few weeks. And so to be able to fill in for a guy as good as John Brown has been incredible to watch him take that step. John Brown is also someone, we'll see if he can play this week. They designated him to return from IR and he's been practicing this week. We'll see today how he practices, but we'll see if he's in the game. We've missed him, definitely. He's someone who can stretch the field like Stefon Diggs can. He's someone that this offense has missed the last few games and has had to learn how to play without. You look to our running backs, Zach Moss, Devin Singletary. They're smaller running backs, but man, they can get tough yards. And then we've got a tight end in Dawson Knox, who is a great player as well, who's a great blocker, who can catch passes that nobody can because of his size. And then we've got a wide receiver that used to be on the Broncos in Isaiah McKenzie. He's kind of our gadget guy. He can do a lot of things. Like I've said, this offense is unique and each player can bring different assets to the field. And Isaiah McKenzie is someone like that. You can put him on the field and ask him to do anything and he'll do it. He has speed like no one else on that offense. So those are several different weapons that Josh Allen has been able to rely on this season and that have helped the Bills get to 10-3.
Okay, last one here regarding the matchup here for you, Maddy. I have to talk a little bit about the defense because since week 9, Buffalo has the 6th best run defense and the 2nd best 3rd down defense in the entire league. So what clicked here in the second half of the season for the Bills defense? And do you see any weaknesses at all that maybe Drew Lock and this Broncos offense can exploit this week?
The only weaknesses that I can see are health. We are pretty healthy right now. That has not been the case for this defense to start the season. And I think that's why this defense had a tougher time of putting things together. So if they have a couple guys out, you guys may have a little bit of an advantage there in certain areas. But if we're healthy, it's going to be tough to pass on. It's going to be tough to run on this defense because they've been doing such a great job as of late. I also think besides health, one of the things that has been tough for this defense, and maybe the same for a lot of defenses in the league, we had several new faces join our defensive line this season, and we know it starts up front in this league. It starts with your offensive line and your defensive line, and it's taken a little bit of time for this defensive line to find their chemistry, to find the rotation that they want. Because we have so many guys up front, we like to rotate, and you've had to find that perfect rotation. They've been able to do that in the second half of this season here. But they've also been able to learn how to come together and play together. I think no preseason games has affected the defenses more than the offenses. They need those few games to hit and to tackle each other. That's been a little bit tough for this defense in the first 3 games. If we look back to how they've played, they really missed out on tackling. And when you start to do those things and get comfortable again with doing something so simple as tackling, you start to play together, you start to play whole. I also think this defense has been able to get takeaways at a rate that they haven't been in the first half of the season. You talk about their 3rd down defense too. In the first 6 weeks of play, they ranked 30th in 3rd down defense. They were allowing teams to convert 3rd downs at a rate of 53.5% as of the last weeks 7 through 14, they rank so much higher in third down defense. They've been able to climb the ranks in third down defense overall. They've just been doing so much better also in that area. Interceptions, turnovers, takeaways. It's been great to see them come alive, because this secondary is a secondary that can wreck an offense, and that is a mature and older secondary. And they've had 10 interceptions in the last 7 games, I want to say, in weeks 7 through 14. That ties for second best in the NFL. You already touched on their third down defense that also ranks second in that time span. They're only allowing teams to convert at a rate of 31.3%. So I think those are a couple areas that this team wanted to see improvement on, and has finally seen improvement on, because they're playing together, because they're playing a little bit more aggressive too.
Okay, well, this week, the Broncos are going to look to play spoiler, because the Bills have the opportunity to clinch their first AFC East title since 1995, although there are still a couple of other ways that can happen as well. But I'd love to take a second to transition here and learn a little bit more about you and your career, because like many of our loyal listeners know, we love talking football here on the Snap, but we also love to use this platform to really shine a spotlight on some of the most amazing women in the sports industry. So really quick, I mean, you're so knowledgeable about the Bills. I think we could all assume, but tell us a little bit about your role with the Bills. What does your day-to-day look like?
Yeah, so my day-to-day, like you all, especially this week, I feel like I'm running around with my head cut off, because there's so many things to accomplish before a Saturday kick. You think Thursday night football is tough. Well, Saturday night football, I think, is just as tough. Or this week, it's just a little bit more tougher for whatever reason. Yeah. But my title is multimedia journalist here with the Buffalo Bills. So this season, like you guys, has looked a lot different. But I am one of our few reporters who get to cover the team on a daily basis. So going to practices, being a part of interviews, the Zoom interviews that we've been doing so many of this season. I do a lot of writing for the team, feature story writing. I host a couple shows, a pregame show, 2 postgame shows. I have a podcast with our owner, Kim Pagula, which has been amazing to be a part of. I can't believe she even has the time to give to a podcast, but she really believes in connecting with our fan base, which is incredible. So she makes the time to do something like that. And pretty much fill it in between, anything that pops up. We get new things that come out every week, breaking news. I'm there to cover it, but it's just been a blessing to be a part of this team the last 2 seasons, just to see their improvement, to see that we can win the AFC East this weekend if we defeat the Broncos is so great. And every day is just amazing. I mean, we work in the dream job world here, and it can get a little bit busy, especially this week, but I always count my blessings being a part of an industry that's so awesome to work in.
Yeah, Maddy, you've been with the Bills for 2 seasons now. What has been your favorite part of that gig?
Gosh, I think my favorite thing is the relationship aspect. Getting to know the players and the coaches as more than just a player and a coach is incredible. And through that, my truly favorite part is getting to share and tell their stories. I think football players, I think coaches are so inspiring to the world. Just to make it to the NFL is something that many people can't do, and is an inspiring story in itself. But also to learn about some of the things that our players have gone through, the backgrounds that they come from, the hardships that they deal with on a day-to-day basis, getting through an entire season in a pandemic. They have lived such inspiring lives, and I love sharing their stories and getting to share that with the world, because I feel like in turn it can inspire other people.
Couldn't have said it better myself. That's my favorite part of the job too. Take us to the very beginning though, Maddy. What has your path looked like to get to where you are today?
Yeah, so I'm from Chicago. I grew up watching and playing sports. It was my favorite thing to do. My dad got me and my brother and sister involved in cheering for all Chicago sports teams from a really young age. Played softball most of my life. And so sports have been such a big part of my life that I knew when I was going into college that I somehow wanted to figure out how to work in sports. And I kind of thought, I wonder if I can get paid to talk about sports. And here I am getting paid to to talk about sports, something that a lot of people aren't able to do. But I went to Mizzou, went through their journalism school, an amazing journalism school to go through. It kicked my butt, but for all the right reasons, and was able to get my first job out of college at Stanford University, where I worked for a season and did some on-camera and producing stuff for them and their athletic teams, and then worked at the University of Tennessee for 4 years, where I was their on-air reporter, a producer. I sidelined on the radio for their football games for our official radio station, and also did a lot of sidelining for SEC Network digital games. So did quite a bit with them, and then found my way to Buffalo. Never thought I would live in Buffalo, but in the sports industry, I feel like we never thought we would live in a lot of places. But sports can take us anywhere. They can take us all over the world. And so here I am in Buffalo, living my best life. It's getting a little bit cold here, but I'm thankful that I'm from Chicago, because I've had a couple years growing up where I've gotten used to the cold and the snow.
I will never forget last year's game between the Bills and Broncos. I felt wind, but I feel like that was a moment where I wish I was from Chicago, because the wind that was ripping through the stadium, I was like, okay, I'm a press box girl this week. I'm sorry, I can't sit out here.
No, the wind in Buffalo is so intense. I got here, and it's the wind in Orchard Park too, where the Bills play. I moved here and I was like, this is the Windy City. Chicago is not the Windy City. And they called the Windy City for politics and for other things in Chicago. Right. So it's really not the Windy City. Buffalo is the Windy City. Windiest city in the country.
We're going to change it. We're going to let everybody know. Well, throughout your path, I'm sure you faced some challenges along the way. What is maybe one of the most important lessons that you learned as you worked your way up to your role with the Bills?
I think one of the most important things that I've learned, and it's very cliche, but, as a female, as a woman in this industry that is dominated by men, and it's looking different, in the last few years and in the years to come, but there's still a lot of men in this industry, and we all work alongside pretty much all men, I could say, without thinking. I could be wrong. But to not let that intimidate you, to be okay being one of few, at least for now. Hopefully 5 to 10 years down the road, it's not the case, but to not give up, to not let people tell you can't do something, to not get discouraged by all of the criticism that the three of us receive on social media from people who just want to poke you or just push you that day, but to keep going. I know, right? Sit in their basement behind their screens and type some rude things that we don't need to hear, because, hey, we're out here trying to make it. We're women working for a football team, and we're just trying to do our best. So just to push through, if you have a goal, if you have a dream, to believe in yourself and not let anyone tell you otherwise, because if I let other people get to me and their thoughts and their whatever they want to say, I would not be where I am today. So there's a lot of belief that has to go into yourself in order to get into this industry and in order to climb the ladder in this industry.
Well, Maddy, again, thank you so much for taking the time to join us on The Snap this week. You have had such an amazing career so far, and we really look forward to watching you continue to just absolutely crush it in Buffalo.
Thanks, guys. It was so great to be on. So nice to talk to you both virtually. I wish it was in person. I wish I was going to the game this weekend, but 2020 things, we'll have to put it on the schedule for the next time.
Well, sadly, that's all the time we have for this week's edition of The Snap. For Sydney Jones, I'm Alexis Perry. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Broncos Podcast Network and, of course, to the Broncos YouTube channel. We will see you guys right back here next week for the latest edition of The Snap.